Welcome once again to Ponte Politic on a Sunday. It is one of those wonderful days with which we meet up and we have a conversation with one another on issues that relate to the political developments and the issues around the country and the continent. And once again, I want to welcome you to this wonderful program of this Sunday. It's Ponte Politic, and we are available on YouTube at Ponte Politic, as you can see. Please make sure that when you do watch these live broadcasts, you are liking our Facebook page, you are subscribing on our YouTube channel, you are also following us on our Twitter pages, and you ensure that you do everything in your power to be part and parcel of these conversations. We are available on different platforms of the social media to ensure that we are able to reach a large number of people over there. As it's a new month, it is having its own things and its own advantages and disadvantages. And unfortunately or fortunately, we are part and parcel of a group of people who always want to be part of these different engagements. If you are following me personally as the host of this program, on Twitter, I am at ODGuy1, at ODGuy1 is my Twitter handle, but also I am available on Facebook at Tandolwetu Danga. Once again, I have said it earlier that I welcome you all in this conversation. Over the past few weeks, I have not been feeling well, but my team has kept on saying that we need to proceed one way or the other. If my voice has disappointed you in one way or the other, as we are conversing with one another in this conversation, I would like to apologize for that. Just bear with us. We have been not feeling well for the past few weeks, and because we put so much importance on the issue of making sure that these broadcasts on Sundays, they take part, and therefore we even pull our boots up to ensure that we are part and parcel of this conversation. There was another. It has always been our interest that we must ensure that we provide this the viewers at home with the best analysis that we, even information at times, that we feel like it is important in the understanding of the politics of our country, continent, and the world in general. And our discussion today focuses on an issue relating to the question that was posed at the backdrop of the presidential elections in Nigeria. And majority of people then had started to think around the issue of Africa being cursed. And I think this came as a result of the age of the candidate that became the presidential elect on the day of the elections. I think they were on the 25th of February 2023, and in some states they had to be extended to 26 because of various various issues. But before we can move with this conversation and how I would like to unpack it, I want to take us through something that has been written by Sako Akira in one of the on African politics, and I'm going to take you through it so that we can be able to extend, or we can be able to embark on our conversation on this issue of asking the question whether politically is Africa cursed. And welcome if you are watching with us on YouTube. Welcome if you are watching with us on Facebook. And I can see that today my team has included my personal profile on Facebook as one of the streaming environments. So if you are there also, please make sure that you send your comments and questions, or make whatever input that you would like to make. This is what is written on African politics. Somebody says that we need to identify unique characteristics through comparison when we talk to African politics. They then say, Sato Akira, the year 2005 was named the second year of Africa, recalling 1960, the year of Africa, in which African nations won their independence one after another, with aid to Africa being a major discussion topic of Glenago's summit and focus on midterm evaluations of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals on Africa. International attention has been turned to the serious issues of poverty, communicable diseases such as HIV and AIDS, and conflicts faced by sub-Saharan African nations. From the standpoint of area studies, whose goal is the understanding of others, the increased attention on and increased newspaper and television coverage on Africa or of Africa is seen as a positive as a positive recognizance and development. However, given the focus of the coverage on disasters alone by these platforms, and it is important to recognize that such narrow coverage can potentially lead to a one-dimensional, stereotypical output or outlook of the region. There are 49 independent sub-Saharan countries, including island nations, each with its own history and characteristics. Now, Akiri says in order to develop a deeper understanding of Africa as a region, it is important to pay attention to both unique characteristics of individual nations, as well as to identify their commonalities. The same can also be said for understanding politics in Africa. While donor countries and international development agencies tend, in general, to focus on the problems of Africa, such as the deficiencies in governance, the dictatorships, the corruption, the conflicts and insecurity of multi-ethnic societies, the political realities of individual African nations, of each of which has its own unique characteristics, does not allow us to generalize them, which with such stereotypical views. However, it should be understood that the dictatorship, governance, corruption, conflicts, and insecurities of multi-ethnic societies tend to be sub-elements of liberal democratic focus in post-1990 democratic societies. So I then read further Akiri when he says, the elimination of such single-sided generalization evaluation can be said to be the mandate of African political science research. For example, the most important development in African countries in recent years has been the democratization since the 1990s. Well, this is something that is true, in which mainly military rules or single-party rules have been replaced by multi-party regimes in almost all African nations. While some countries have experienced insecurities during the democratization process, for example, Cote d'Ivoire, there are other countries in which democracy seems to have taken root. These are examples of these are Kenya, Zambia, and others. But with regards to civil wars and unrest, again, while there are countries experiencing chronic war like Liberia, Burundi, and Sudan, and others, other countries have experienced a certain degree of success in national reconciliation, like Rwanda has done after their cessation of conflicts in 1993-94, somewhere there. So these differences only come to light through a good area study of the African continent, and therefore any political situation must be understood within its individual countries and must be carefully analyzed and compared with those of other countries within the region. I gave this outlook, I gave this reading deliberately so that it can be a foundation of my conversation today. And I made this conversation to be coming at the backdrop of the Nigerian elections. Before we can start on our conversation on the Nigerian elections, let us quickly drink a little bit of water and come back. Is Africa really cursed? Can we therefore state categorically that Africa is cursed politically? When I looked at the news and the news media around the week of the 25th, that means the last weekend up until this week, I saw a large number of people complaining around the issue of the issue that was taking place at uh, um, these tricky things that are always making around the issue of the elections in Nigeria. And I read these comments and I look at them and I found them people bringing something that can say that they are hopeless. They reflect an element of hopelessness because people have then look at the situation that has been happening over these countries as situations that are a hopeless case. Now, if you look at these things and you find you want to make sense and you want to understand whether, honestly speaking, is Africa cursed politically. We were looking at the president-elect of Nigeria, and majority of people were saying, "Look at his age. He's very old. He seems like he cannot he can't even stand." Remember, President Bola Tinubu. He's president now. He's president-elect. Bola Tinubu is 70 years old, and he has been a governor of Lagos State for most of I think, for over 10 years. And his election is not something peculiar in the African continent. And when I looked at the majority of the comments and the people who were making these inputs around the issue of Tinubu, President-elect Tinubu of Nigeria, they felt, or I felt like they were like, no, we give up. And majority of these people who tend to make these comments on social media are young people. And young people in their very nature, they tend to be very robust in the social political commentary, but they tend to be not very robust involved in the actual politics of the day. So I'm giving this background as an important thing. So when these presidential elections took place, Nigeria is the largest democracy in the continent because it goes with about 900 million people, if one were to say, 900 million people. And the number of people who participated in the elections give us around about, is it 8 million or 10 million? I'm not sure, but it's not the 10%. If it's beyond the 10%, it's above. It's too much. Sorry. If it's beyond the 10% of the population of the people who are eligible to vote, it is too much. So what we had picked up was that the majority of people who are eligible to vote in Nigeria did not vote. Let's put that out in the open so that we can be able to begin to talk to other issues that are critical. And if you look at what transpired in Nigeria, I say that the majority of people did not participate in the elections themselves. You would remember that Ponte Politic once made a commentary, a full episode, 1 hour, speaking about how young people tend to not participate in elections, and we were giving an overview of the population of various societies. And we spoke about South Africa And you spoke about the number of people who are participating in elections, the number of people who are not participating in elections. Then, and it gives, we talk about the lifespan and all of that. I want to do that and give a glance into a little bit in Nigeria. I'm focusing on Nigeria deliberately because it is the foundation of my commentary for the day. One, I said Nigeria has got about 900 million. Well, I was incorrect. It says 93.4 million people were eligible to vote. 93.4 million people were eligible to vote. There were 93.4 eligible people to vote in Nigeria, but the population is around about 200 million. And the age of people who are below 35, they make about 39%. So almost 40% of the population in Nigeria is below the ages of 35. And the life expectancy in Nigeria specifically is 53 years old, and the literacy rate is 62%. And you've got a neck-to-neck type of a group of people religiously, half, about 53.56 of Muslims, and around 52, 51, 50, somewhere there, covering for the Christian religious background. And the dominant language that is spoken in that part of the world is English. However, there's Hausa, there's Yoruba, there's Igbo, and there's Pidgin as well. And Nigeria is about, its GDP goes around 440.8 million US dollars. And it's got a big area, if one were to say, about 923.726 square miles as a location, and also its currency is naira. Now, when people were beginning to speak about these issues of Africa is cursed, because they saw President-elect Bola Tinubu, who is 70 years old, as a president. No, man, we can't be continuing to elect these people. What is strange, and what I think majority of people were making these contributions mainly on the social media space, especially on Twitter, on Facebook, and other platforms. It seems like they were not aware that the outgoing president was actually 76 years old. So the one that is currently entering is 6 years younger. You understand? And so Buhari was 76 years old. And there has been a little comparison between the two around the issue of that age. And I'm worried that sometimes we tend to speak, or maybe we are influenced by algorithms when we speak about issues. But it's important to understand that President Buhari, who is an outgoing president in Nigeria, was 76 years old. Then there are other candidates that were taking part in Nigeria. Nigeria, traditionally, since it came into democracy, has had mainly a two-horse race. It tended to be a two-horse race, but this time around it was not the case. There were other races. There were other horses in the race that were taking part. If I were to tell you that the average age of the people who were participating in Nigeria and in Nigerian politics, there was an unfortunate thing was that their age, the average age is 61 years old. So you've got round about 61 years old of people who were participating in becoming the presidential hopefuls, if one were to say. You get my point. So I want you to understand that even the others are not as young as you would think about. And if you If you look at the life expectancy, it's 53 years old, but the average people who are running for the presidential candidacy in Nigeria, outside of, I'm talking about outside of Buhari and Tinubu, their average age is 60. You understand? So again, you are not having a better situation. You're not. You're not, and it is not making it any better. It does not look like it is better in any way, because nonetheless, the people who were there, the people who were there at the time, I would say that they were about other pensioners. If we go with the statistics of life expectancy, they were then themselves older. So it is important that you understand that dynamic as well. So when you talk about that, is Africa cursed? Maybe we need to, when we make these questions, we must make them with that understanding. Now, it says also that the Federal Republic of Nigeria has got a very youthful people, if one were to say. I would say that if you've got over 39% of people below the ages of 35, if one were to say, I want to, you over 35, then surely it implies that you have had a great number of you have had a great number of young people in that part of the world. So it's important that you need to understand this. Now, Tinubu got 8.8 million votes in total. He won that with 8.8 votes. The person who came before him, which is Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, was somewhere below him, I think, with a million or so. And when you look at all these elements, you look at the total number, the number of people participating, the total number. And this is influenced by the question that Iswile is asking us, that you said that 93 million people were eligible to vote in Nigeria. How many did actually vote? And he says, if you had mentioned it, you must then please or tell us more about that particular thing. If one were to say, to answer your questions, there was only about 10% of people who came out to vote in the Nigeria elections. 10% of the total population of those who are eligible to vote. So if one were to look at about 93 million of people who are eligible to vote, you've got 10% of that. It makes it difficult to even understand whether this is the reflection of democracy. Now, with that understanding of what has transpired in Nigeria, and how people who were participating in the numbers and so on and so forth, and the age group of the runners and so on and so forth, leading us to the question, when we see this Mr. Tinubu as a president-elect, to then say, oh, I would think that Africa is politically cursed. And again, I want to make it a point that you understand the reason why people or Tinubu looks the way he looks. He has been reported, remember he's an accountant, he spent most of his time in the United States, and he worked in great firms in America for a large number of time, until he came to become a senator in Lagos, which he has lost in these elections. By the way, the city. The people in Lagos did not vote for him. They voted for the opposition, or they voted for the second candidate, if one were to say. So he did not garner around those people in the city center, which is where he's normally famous for. His stronghold is the city center. Now, where am I going with this? He studied in the US. His net worth is very high. He's a rich person, but he's being reported as a person who's sickly because of the usage of nicotine and all of that. I'm not sure whether that is true, but there has been that reports around him. Now, move away then from Nigeria. We'll come back to you. You go to Burkina Faso. September, a coup d'etat. Somebody takes over again. And people will say, but it's the fourth coup d'etat in not so many years. Really, Africa is cursed, you understand? And when you look at that dynamic, and it makes people young and old, political animals and non-political animals. It makes them feel like, you know what, we should not be participating in this nonsense, because nonetheless Africa is cursed politically. You understand? So people tend to then, when they look at these dynamics, they feel like, this continent is really cursed. You move again. When there's a little bit of stability in Burkina Faso, there's another coup, which currently now at least it's been a few months, somewhere 2 months, 5 months, and there seems to be some stability. I'll come back to these things because I'm giving them as a way where I'm going with this question, because I want to understand really, is Africa really politically cursed? And again, you go to Tunisia currently. Yesterday, the Tunisian government has put on some very strict laws that are taking place, and therefore he's blaming. He says he blames black people for the problems of Tunisia. And again, you find another problem there. Where maybe the reason why the president in that part of the world is blaming black people. He's actually moving along with this attitude that Africa is cursed, because Africa is the land of black people, if one were to say. Now, if you look at that, you go again into the east of the continent, where there was a little bit of stability and progress that we're seeing under the leadership of John Pombe Magufuli in Tanzania. And then there was a reclamation of the land and all that. Even though there are the problems that are taking place around the border areas of the Maasai people there, but you could understand that there was a little bit of some stability that was taking place in that part of the world, where you see also Kenya, something that we've read, talking about the stability or the entrenchment of democracy in those parts of the world. Rwanda, with Kagame doing what he does, when people are claiming that it is a democracy, some claiming that it is an authoritarian state. But again, what I'm saying is, I want you to look at these elements of the African continent. You go to the Southern Africa, you've got in South Africa, to be specific, where you've got a country that is experiencing blackouts, electricity blackouts, and the majority of the party that is governing seems to be imploding on its own. But also at the same time, when you look at the governance and the reconciliation euphoria that has been there after the democratic dispensation seems to have lost, then there's a lot of high upsurge of crime and all that. You go to Zimbabwe, there was seemingly some stability, but now all of a sudden there are scandals that are coming up where the people of Zambia are being accused as to be in the pockets of some business people who are selling gold in Africa, in South Africa, and all those elements. And so when you look in its entirety, Again, the last example is in Guinea-Bissau, where the majority of people seem to have voted for a specific political party, but unfortunately, the elections were overturned because of, and all of these things that are taking place in the continent, they tend to make one feel like Africa is really cursed. But I'm asking this question from your perspective. What do you think? Do you think that Africa is cursed? And I'm asking this question deliberately because, from my perspective, as a person who reads political sciences and who wants to do a thorough political analysis on some of these issues, we tend to look at the outcomes of this democratization as the answers to our curse as Africans. We tend to look at the outcomes of democratization as the answers to our curse as the Africans politically. And if I don't mention politically when I'm saying this, you must know that I'm talking about a political outlook. Some people would say, no, because Africa has been cast even in the time of Ham or Shem in the Bible story and all that jazz. I'm not talking about those elements. I'm talking about the political aspect. Now, this is my view. The democratization process, which is not new in the African continent, but what is new in the African continent is the liberal democratic paradigm, is the liberal democratic outlook, which, when I read earlier, I spoke about the issue of multi-party states, multi-party elections, and all that. And this example you have seen when I was talking about the issue of Nigeria, where I was mentioning that we had about 5 candidates coming from different parties: Labour Party, the New Nigeria Party, the All Progressives People Party or All Progressive Democracy, and all that. The one for Abubakar Buhari, and all that. So if you look at those dynamics as well, one would say that, but why don't we interrogate this element, this issue of liberal democratic dimension as the reason that keeps on giving us the type of leaders that we were getting? Maybe at some point, it is this system that does not produce what the African people want. Maybe it is this system that the African people do not like or do not prefer or do not identify with. And therefore, it is for this reason that you could have 93 million people eligible to vote in Nigeria, but only 10% of that number of people would actually go and vote. Do you get my point? And also, at the same time, it could be that it is for this reason that you would have a group of people who would then be regarded as rebels at the end because they do not subscribe to the process of this so-called voting, because they feel like even that voting process itself might have been rigged. Because I've seen videos of some senators in Nigeria destroying votes, destroying ballot papers, and they're caught on video. You've seen various stories where there has been reports, extensive reports about the rigging of elections in various parts of the continent. All these individual states, there has never been a time when there is no contestation. There's always a contestation, even if you have independent observers, even if you can have America jumping immediately after a certain candidate that they prefer to be president, coming to congratulate them, that particular candidate, like they have done with the president-elect Tinubu immediately after his after the announcement. So maybe that on its own has got its own problem. Governance is a problem in the African continent politically. Corruption is a problem. The multi-party, the wars, and the ethnic violence, the criminality, and all these things. I want to believe that they are a problem in the African continent. However, I'm saying maybe as a way of trying to identify whether are we really politically cursed as an African people in Africa, maybe we need to maybe draw back a little bit, maybe step back and look at the system with which is regarded as democratization process that is in Africa, whether it is benefiting the people of Africa in general, whether it is benefiting the young people, the young population in particular in the continent. Because most of the time, a majority of times, as I have said already, is that we look at Tinubu as the answer to the as the problem. We look at Tinubu, a 70-year-old, or we look at Buhari, the 76-year-old. We look at the other old statesmen and women, old parliamentarians in the African continent, old politicians who are corruptible in the African continent, and we look at them and we say they are the problem. Which for me, I don't know about you, I want to hear your view. Which for me is it is not only that. I think they are the outcome. They are the outcome of the type of political democratization or the type of political democracy that has been, I argue that it has been imposed on us as an African people, and therefore it tends to produce something that we do not identify with as the majority in the continent. And when the majority do not identify with that particular outlook of democracy or with the particular outcomes of that democracy, one of the things that tends to happen is you then find people who are rebels. You tend to find people who are going to sabotage the state. You tend to find people who are not going to be loyal to the state. You tend to find people that are not going to be identifying and aligning themselves even with the policies of the state. What then happens when all of those things happen? One of them is there will be a high crime rate in that particular society. Two, it's easy for people to have, we call it brain drain. It's easy for people to leave the continent and also to go and join other societies and be used against their own countries. They then become intelligence agents against their own countries because they are no longer loyal to their own country. So when you look at this democratization process, while it might be good in the books of political sciences, while it may be good in the Western democratic paradigm, this multi-party political party, multi-party system, the elections every 5 years, and then the focus must be on corruption, ending war, shooting, closing down, silencing the guns, the aiding, you must give aid to this society, and all of that, while they might be good on paper, but it seems like they are not good in practical terms. They therefore are not benefiting the majority of people in the African continent. And these people in the African continent tend to, when they look at these things, they look at them and they be like, actually we're being shortchanged here. And maybe it is for this reason why I'm therefore saying, probably what is cursing us, if we are really cursed as an African people, is the liberal democratic process, is the liberal democratic demigodiness, is the liberal democratic hegemony that has been placed on the African people as a political system that would solve the problems of our society. And it is for this reason that therefore I'm saying we might not be cursed because something out of ordinary came and cursed us, but it is a man-made project that has been given or placed on us to therefore say, you Africans, you must be part, you must align with this thinking, even though the thinking itself does not even provide you with what you would call this, you can't even identify with. Imagine you are you are expected to be to be I am what example can I use? Imagine you are a young person and then you are taken to a party of 90-year-olds. Your age is you are in the teens. You are placed in the party of 90-year-olds. You are alone there, and they enjoy themselves. By default, I doubt that you will be enjoying yourself because you can't identify with those people because there's a big gap between yourself and them. They have experienced life differently to you. They are living and they feel certain things different to you, like you do yourself. They are also not viewing the world or perceiving the world as you perceive it. They do not have the same experiences as you have them. They do not see the future as you see the future. And unfortunately, because of that reality, it becomes difficult for you to even enjoy yourself. What then will happen at that party? Possibly, you are going to be alienated. And when you are alienated, the possibility is that you're either going to leave that party or you are going to be in a state of despair for the entire time. So this is an example that I want to show when I talk about liberal democratic paradigm and what it does to the African people. And this way of looking at it gives us the problems. Therefore, when we talk about the politics of the African continent, we want to look at the outcomes of the system. We don't look at the actual system as the conduit, as the driver to those outcomes. Look at South Africa currently. The ANC had elections in Nasrec in December in South Africa, and about 5,000 delegates they voted for Cyril Ramaphosa to become the president of the ANC. By default, therefore, if Cyril Ramaphosa is the president of the ANC, by default he is going to become the president of the country. And also they have voted for I forgot now the name of this guy from Alex to be a deputy president. Majority of people feel like, but why would you vote for Paul Mashatile to be a president? That's his name. Why would you call for Paul Mashatile? I'm saying 5,000 people decided to vote for Paul Mashatile, and Paul Mashatile must be sworn in to become a deputy president because the deputy president of the country, which is Tinubu, has resigned as a member of parliament, and therefore by default there's no deputy president. I'm saying 5,000 people out of the 56 million people who tend to be part and parcel and who are feeling the pinch of high unemployment, electricity blackouts, and all other problems that come with the governing structure or the governing party in South Africa. All of them, the people who decided who must be in charge, are 5,000. And again, where does this come from? It's coming from liberal democracy. Liberal democratic processes define or say that we must have a representative government. So I can be one, but represent a million people. How foolish can that be? How nonsensical can that be? Where one person can represent a million people? How is that? Do you understand? You see now why I'm saying that yes, you might agree that maybe politically Africa is cursed, but what is causing the curse? Is it because the leaders are corruptible? Is it because the leaders are greedy? Is it because we live in a society that is unjust? I'm saying yes, those things are very important. And majority of political analysts, when they look into the problems of our society, the African continent, they always focus on those things. And I say maybe we need to make a step back a little bit and look at the system. Is it beneficial for us? I don't know, but I don't think so. Because it keeps on producing for us things that we're not happy about and things that continue to make us question our our ourselves as an African people, as a nation, as an African nation. It makes us to even want to hit ourselves and pull ourselves down with words that are like, we're really cursed. Africa is cursed because of the type of leaders that we were having. We think that by healing or we think that by having a younger president, we might be solving the problem of our case. And that might not be the case. Maybe the problem might be not only the outcomes of the system, but the system itself. Did you get my drill? This is my point that I'm trying to put across, that if Africa is cursed, it is cast on the basis of the system itself, first and foremost. And we need to move and analyze from that perspective. By the time we go to the issue of governance and lack thereof, corruption and all other elements, including the war and everything else, we must not absolve the system of liberal democracy. I know that people tend to think, then which is the best way, which is the best one? Which is the best one that can sustain us as an African people? I don't know. I don't know which is the best one, but I know this one has tended to become very problematic for us as a people. And its problems is that the system itself, it does not want to be augmented. It must always define what is defined with. It must stay there and we must toe the line. That is the problem that I have with the system that currently produces for us the Tinubus of this world, the Buharis of this world, the Mnangagwas of this world, and the Ramaphosa's of this world, and the others. It is the type of system that I feel like it is very problematic. It is also the type of system that makes it possible for the so-called rebels coming out. It is also the type of system that has produced this thing of Africans must be given aid. It is the same problem that has provided an opportunity for the South African government when it was when it didn't want to give some Afghanistans or Afghans asylum. It was taken to court by some NGOs or civil organizations which are linked to the Americans, taken to court and therefore forced to take these people as for asylum. When actually the government is stating that no, we are concerned about our state sovereignty. Do you understand these dynamics? And unfortunately, because liberal democratic principles defy or tend to rely on these notions of human rights and protection of people's individual rights and all social justice and all that nonsense that tends to be a facade, and it is never experienced fully by the majority of the African people. Liberal democratic principles tend to rely on that, something that we do not, as an African people, benefit from. And I'm therefore making an argument, and I'm therefore putting it to you as well, to say that, is really Africa cursed? If it is not only the outcomes where we have President-elect Tinubu, a 70-year-old, where we have an outgoing President, a 76-year-old Buhari in Nigeria. It is not only that is an outcome, a reflection of the case of Africa politically. But it is also that the possibilities that the system with which Africa has adopted and made it, the system with which Akira was talking about it here when I was reading earlier, saying that democratization process has rooted itself. Maybe it is that system. Somebody would then say, so are you anti-democracy? I'm not anti-democracy. I want you to hear me properly. I am not anti-democracy. I'm anti-liberal democracy. And if you want to see the problems of liberal democracy in action, maybe you need to go and read the judgments around the Americans and the involvement of money and funding of political campaigns in America. You look at that and you read those judgments. You get to understand the problem and the influences of outsiders in a democratic process. Elections in their very nature in liberal democracy, they are not only influenced by your ex or the correct or your voting, let me put it like that. They are not influenced by your voting. They are influenced by many variables. One of them is money. Go to America, read their judgments on these issues of political campaign funding. And it is at that level where you're going to see that actually liberal democracy is a farce. And it might be the cause of the problems that we are seeing in the continent. There was a serious allegation against President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa was it 2017, 2018 when he went for the first time in Nazareth to run for the presidency. And there were people who claimed openly that that conference was bought. If there was no money, probably he would have lost. They said for the first time, the ANC conference was defined by money, and maybe conferences that go beyond that one, they are also being defined. In the news today, I saw in one of the articles, there are some people who are claiming, therefore, that they were part and parcel of buying delegates. So you look at this, and what does liberal democracy have in common in all societies? There is this underlying influence of money, and maybe it is that makes us to even feel like we are cursed. And we are not cursed as an African people politically. It is this political system that we are adopting. It is the system that we have taken and we have embraced as an answer to our problems. Now, at the backdrop of the Nigerian elections, at the backdrop of the governance problems that we are experiencing in the continent, at the backdrop of everything that is taking place in the continent, including the civil wars, including the terrorist claims and the terrorist attacks, and everything else, you might find that the majority of the problems of our society as the African people are that they emanate from the system itself. And we have not taken the time to go and interrogate this system and look at it and whether it is a system that is beneficial for the majority of the people. Let me close my argument by citing this particular issue around the Nigerian elections. First, 5 political parties. In liberal democratic principles, you've got these elements. There must be a 5-year election cycle. There must be multi-party participation. The elections must be free and fair, and also there must be these observers, international observers, who are going to come and define and say, yes, these elections were free and fair. No, these elections were not free and fair. I might be missing other other elements, but I want to speak about these ones that are four. First, the fourth one, where somebody comes in and tell you that actually these elections are free and fair, therefore you are a democratic society. Pella, that thing is nonsense. On its own, by just reasoning around it, it's just foolishness. Where somebody comes into your house and tell you, you know what, it's only you are only democratic because I say so. If I don't say so, then you are not. That's just foolishness. The other part, the other aspect is that there must be this multi-party participation. Okay, again, I agree. You've got those multi-party elections. You've got 5 political parties in Nigeria, 5 or 4 or 5. In South Africa in 1994, there were 20-something, 24. 16 of them, you don't even know where did they come from. All of a sudden, there was a number of political parties that came into the fore of, so that there must be a democratic process. Parties that you don't even know. There was Kiss Party, there was Soccer Party, there was Ajalalwa, there's a lot of parties that you didn't know where they came from. You understand? Now, if you look at those parties, all of them, parties can be in proportionate in relation to the people who are participating. They even could be higher. Because liberal democracy wants us to focus, it closes our eyes and say, no, there were many parties, therefore there was multi-party democracy. There was multi-party participation, and therefore the principle, the tick list of the checkbox of liberal democracy has been met. When actually, if you look at some of those parties, they could be a duplication of one party. For the sake of just acting as if they are multi-parties. There's also the issue of 5-year elections on this multi-party front, multi-party process. And again, why must it be 5 years? Why must it be determined by 5 years just because the Western democratic principles are saying 5 years? Can't we say 10 as Africans? Can't we say 15? No, we cannot, because why? The liberal democratic principles are not augmentable. They don't want to augment. They defined it, then it must be like that. If it's not, then you do not become a democratic society. You see the nonsenses of liberal democracy that I want to put to you so that you can understand that. I'm trying to say, before we can even look beyond the system itself, the outcomes, where we've got the 70-year-old president-elect, the 76-year outgoing president, the 69-year-old president, the 80-year-old what, and all of that. Maybe we need to start to look at mainly the system that governs our society. And on the basis of that, maybe we can be able to answer the question whether is Africa really cursed. Thank you very much for joining me and for joining us. Undima appreciates you and your participation. Make sure that you continue to be part of the program. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and ensure that you subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you again next Sunday. All the best. Bye-bye.